Everything's going.
Excellent. Can you still hear me in time?
I can. Your your words match up with your mouth now. So
Excellent. That makes me happy. Yeah, I figured something was off when I was responding,
hmm
and then it took you about a second or two to respond after. So
yeah, should be good now. Plus, I think now you should be able to hear my. Let's see. Tell me if you can hear this. Nothing. Okay. Well, you
no,
can't hear it, but the stream can hear it.
perfect.
I have a little soundboard.
Ah,
So
nice. A little soundboard.
all right. Let me go ahead and click so I can find it for the editing, and then you could do your news. Sound good?
Yep.
Okay.
Um. So that brings us to the news of the hour. The reason why we took the last 2 weeks off of our live shows. One was to bring you this awesome streaming platform on three different streaming platforms, right? We're doing Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch.
Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, and we're doing 2 Twitch channels. We're doing mine as well as the official podcast one.
Very cool. That's not my news. That's more Adam's news. But I just got back from a little bit of a European vacation. So my wife and I, we went to Iceland. We went to Reykjavik. Kind of bummed around the city for 2 days. It's cool. Next time I go, I'm definitely getting out of the city, but we used it as a stopover to kind of beat jet lag so that we could go and enjoy the rest of it when we hooked up with her family in London. But while we were there, went to some of the a bunch of different restaurants. We went up to a free botanical garden, which was kind of cool. Um, Found a cute little cafe where everything was in Icelandic, and I thought that my elementary knowledge of Norwegian would help me out, but the Icelandic language has not changed in the last 700 years, and so I recognized the written language, or I was able to decipher the written language, but yes, there was no speaking to anybody in Icelandic, as we had a big language barrier. So,
Yeah, I would imagine. I mean, even like among different English speaking regions, right? Sometimes it's hard to understand spoken English from other countries, whereas the written is super easy. So I imagine it's kind of the same thing, just magnified.
it is interesting. So, like Norwegian, what's your name? Hva heter du?
hmm
Compared to the Icelandic, hvor heiti thu? It's like similar enough, but you really have to think, you know?
Uh-huh.
And that's the hardest thing is they've got two letters that isn't in the modern Scandinavian language alphabet that you kind of have to understand how they interact with other things, plus a whole bunch of rules about double letters. Like a double L comes out as a K sound.
Oh,
Just,
weird.
just interesting stuff. So yeah.
Nice.
Um, so linguistics aside, after that we went to London. Went to London Tower, Buckingham Palace, did all the touristy stuff there. Um, I got to be one of the lucky few that got to see Tower Bridge open. Uh, got to see it open twice.
Oh, nice.
Apparently, according to legend, if you see it open, it's considered good luck. You can make a wish type of thing on it because it only opens about 1,000 times a year.
Yeah.
So that was cool. And then we went to the French Alps. I didn't climb. I took a cable car to the mountain peak that is next door to Mont Blanc and got to see the highest point in Europe from about half a kilometer away and about 200 feet shy of the summit. But it would be fun to climb it. The guide that took us up there kind of showed us where we would go, where we would put on the crampons and all that stuff. But the French city, the mayor of the city, is trying to pass a rule right now that's charging climbers 1,500 euro for a climbing permit for Mont Blanc on the French side.
Oh, wow.
Because it's unfair to the French taxpayer to pay the $1,000 search and rescue fee and the $500 or 500 euro funeral costs because of how warm the summer's been. It's actually extremely dangerous to climb from the French route right now. So he's trying to make that a reality just so the taxpayers of France aren't having to foot SARS cost and funeral costs.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah. So that's the 2 weeks that we missed. That's where I've been. I've been climbing the French Alps and exploring London and trying to broaden my linguistic abilities in Iceland. I did bring home a bout of COVID that I think I caught in London. So it's super exciting. I can't really smell anything, and my taste buds kind of suck, and I cough quite often. So yeah.
That is not fun. Not fun.
I thought it was a traveler's cold. I wasn't thinking anything of it. It's just a traveler's cold. I started to feel kind of sick on Saturday before we flew back. Didn't take a test because I didn't have any of the classic symptoms. And then cough got really bad yesterday, the day after I landed, and I think it was fatigue. So I'm like, oh, it's just a traveler's cold. But I was supposed to go to a funeral today, so I decided to take a test just in case.
Mm-hmm.
And almost instant, I got that little double bar. Oh, maybe it's not a traveler's cold. And then when I woke up today, I couldn't smell anything, so I went, okay.
Yeah.
Be a good thing I took the test and didn't go to a funeral with a bunch of people that are significantly older than I am.
Well, good for you for doing the responsible thing and testing and doing all that.
The responsible thing probably should have been to test before I jumped on a plane.
Yeah.
So
you win some, you lose some. You're still
yeah.
doing more than a lot of people, but
yeah. But that's my news.
Nice. So I'm just gonna pause the recording really quick, keep the live stream going. I just need to change one thing. Everything's still working. I just need to make it so that it works a little bit better on my side. And this this will not require a reboot.
Lies.
I just the Zencaster, I can't change my device while it's running, so hopefully this will not yeah, there we go. So I want to change the input to this other thing. All right, I'm going to reload this tab, so
yep.
I might go away for a second. All right, reloaded. And now we want, is it this one? Can you still hear me?
I can.
Okay. So that's good.
I think I'm about to leave next.
Did you hear that?
Yes.
And yay, it's working. It makes me so happy.
Wow.
Ja, glad, glad. God.
Sweet.
Bruh.
The classic. Busting out the classics.
All right, now we can go. Perfect.
Oh, hello there.
We're gonna appear to be a professional outfit, even though we're not.
Oh, we're professional. We're just not making any money from it.
Yeah, that's all right. All right. Clicking the start recording. Is it moving? Yes.
Yeah. Testing. Is this thing on?
Yeah.
Looks like mine's moving as well.
Cool. I like it.
Excellent. Most excellent.
Guess that means we're ready to jump into the real thing.
Yeah.
So let's see. I'm probably going to click, and then I'll probably introduce the main topic since you just finished your news.
Sounds good.
All right. With that awesome travelogue from Steve, that brings us into our main topic. I have to say, definitely jealous of some of the stuff you got to see over there. So, one day.
Yeah, I'm already planning on going back. For sure. My next trip, I do want to rent a car and actually take the Ring Highway and kind of see some of the natural wonders of Iceland. Reykjavik's cool, but there's lots of the country outside of the capital.
Yeah, agreed. Some of the best stuff, I would argue. But
yeah.
All right. So main topic. We decided on this topic back before the vacation. We did this a while ago with some of our favorite action adventure games. So we are doing the same thing, but this time with my favorite game genre, which is RPGs. So we wanted to kind of front load this with our discussion about some of the favorites and some of the other things, and then save our list of top 5 till the very end. But just really quickly, I know we have a pretty broad audience, even if there's not a lot of you. So I just wanted to talk briefly about what is an RPG, what makes a game an RPG as opposed to like some other type of game. So RPG is an abbreviation for role-playing game. And RPGs are generally defined as a game in which players assume the roles of characters in a fictional setting. They take responsibility for acting out those roles within a narrative, either through literal acting or through a process of decision-making regarding character development. And usually the actions you can take in those games either succeed or fail according to a formal system of rules and guidelines. So, did I miss anything there?
No, I think you're good. To sum it up in Steve definition, I always think of an RPG as you taking on the actions of the character through a level up system kind of thing. So you think of your classics, like the tabletop RPGs that most computer games are based off of. Your Dungeons and Dragons, your Pathfinders and stuff. Not only are you play acting as a character, but there's also a level up type of system where you're trying to gain more power through experience in order to become a better character And so I think that's kind of a defining piece as well, the leveling system that most RPGs have, which in my mind separates them from your action adventure games or your first person shooters or things like that.
Yeah, agreed. That's a good way of looking at it. That character progression. So you mentioned tabletop RPGs. There's a couple other varieties of RPGs that I just wanted to give a quick mention to. So obviously, the genre kind of started with like Dungeons and Dragons back in the day. There's lots of other tabletop RPGs. Quite a few, actually, more than most people would realize unless you're kind of in that fandom. There's ones based on like Star Wars, there's Warhammer, there's all kinds of tabletop RPGs. Also, when I was doing some research for this episode, most of the articles consider LARP part of type of RPG. So LARP is live action role play. This is something I never necessarily did, but I had friends in high school that would get dressed up in cosplay, go to the park, and beat on each other with foam swords. And honestly, I'm kind of bummed that I never took part in it because it looked like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I've never done the LARPing thing either, unless you count when you and I were young and we used to pretend like we were in the military and live action role play certain situations out in the desert. But as far as an actual organized LARP type of thing, it looks like a lot of fun. It looks. I wish that growing up, I was not so worried about how other people perceived me, so that I would have given myself permission to go and try something like that, because it looks like a lot of fun. Every now and again, when I'm driving home, there's a certain park where there's a group here in town that get together and do it, and they just look like they're having a blast. Even if nobody's showing up and it's just two people practicing their sword fighting skills, it still looks like fun.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I think, unfortunately, I missed out on some fun experiences because I was too worried about peer pressure and how I would be perceived, but that's all right. You live and you learn.
Right.
So then within kind of the digital games, so video games, there's a couple different sub-varieties. You have your turn-based RPGs, which is, you're in a video game and everything is, you take turns as far as like combat and things, rather than just hitting the enemies as fast as you can. You also have action RPGs, which is kind of more focused on like the hack and slash, but there's still a leveling and progression system. You have your MMORPGs, which is the type of games that I really like to play, where you just have like tons of players all in a world together. MMO standing for massively multiplayer online. So you're like your RuneScapes, your World of Warcrafts, your Star Wars: The Old Republic, stuff like that. And then I put a separate bullet point for JRPG. I've never really gotten into these. I don't know how much there's a lot of overlap between like JRPGs and the other varieties. But I know that there's a few things that typically set them apart. So I felt like it was worth a quick note. But since I know you've played some of the Final Fantasy, what makes a JRPG different from like a World of Warcraft?
As far as JRPGs go, and it's definitely one of my favorite genres out of it. I love the Final Fantasy. I love Dragon Quest. I love like all of those type of things. To me, the defining characteristic is the storytelling. Whereas a Western RPG is definitely more action oriented. You develop the character through the actions that your character does. So, like in an Elder Scrolls game, you gain experience through slashing beasts as you're progressing down the road, and the experience is used to build you up. So your interactions with the world and your interactions with the environment help define a Western RPG, whereas an Eastern RPG or a JRPG, the storyline helps progress your character. And so
Okay.
it's less about the experience that you do, and it's more about the stories that that you're in. So a lot of people from the Western culture look at Eastern RPGs as very grindy, very that you have to really immerse yourself into the character in order to progress. You can't just power level through like you can in a Western RPG because it is so story driven.
That makes sense.
So I guess that's kind of the easiest way is environmental protagonist versus story protagonist type of thing.
Okay, cool. So that kind of leads us into what aspects of RPGs are important for players to have a good experience.
Before we jump into this, though,
Okay.
I have a book recommendation for you all. There is a book out. It's called Fantasy Freaks and Gaming Geeks, an epic quest for reality among role players, online gamers, and other dwellers of imaginary realms. It's by author Ethan Gilsdorf. And as we were talking about LARPing and tabletop and all of that stuff, it reminded me that I read this book not too long ago, and it was kind of a look at geek culture and how it's kind of turned into pop culture. And this guy goes out to experience all of it. So he does the MMO thing, he does the LARPing thing, he does the tabletop group, and just kind of experiences all the different aspects of RPG gaming. And then he writes about it in a journalistic approach. So definitely worth a read if you're interested in learning anything like beyond what we're talking about today.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah. And we'll have a link to the Amazon thing in the show notes.
Yeah.
When this goes live on Sunday. So anyway, sorry. Aspects RPG for a good player experience. Sorry, I didn't mean to steal your thunder.
No, there's no thunder to be had here. Technical difficulties have stolen it 3 or 4 times already, so.
Yeah, fair.
So one of the things for me that is important to have is the world that it's set in. For me, since an RPG is so focused on becoming this character and playing as the character rather than as myself, the world has to be believable, but at the same time, it needs to be different than reality. Like, it can be close. And in fact, we'll talk about a game later called Stardew Valley that is definitely like very realistic in that most things in that game could totally happen, and kind of plays to like a dream that I have. But like there's games where you literally play as a character that like sits in a cubicle and works in like a cubicle farm. And to me, that's not something that's going to be enjoyable for me as an RPG, because if I'm going to pretend to be somebody else, it's going to be something that like I want to do, or something that is, something that I couldn't do in the real world, right? Probably part of the reason that in these games I tend to play non-human characters, right? Like I'll play the orc or like the undead warlock or whatever, because I like to try and step into the realm of something that's a little bit more fantasy.
That's fair. It's funny as you were talking about that. I realized how different you and I approach these games. For me, the world, it doesn't have to be different than ours. It just has to have different rules, if that makes sense. Like, there's got to be something extraordinary about the world when it comes to world building in an RPG. There has to be a magic system or some sort of threat. Like, what before it kind of took off, there was a game called Secret World, and you played in a modern setting in the world, and the difference was you were part of a secret society that was in the know, and you had the ability to harness magic, whereas the mundane couldn't. Like, that was exciting because it took something that I know about and it turned it fantastical in that way.
Okay.
So some of the most compelling RPGs for me are the ones that operate almost identical to our world with slight differences.
Okay. Yeah, that's a cool way of thinking about it.
So, and unlike you, I use RPGs as I used to use them as an escape thing. There were aspects growing up that I had a hard time dealing with, and RPGs were a great way for me to escape. And so I always played characters that are close to me but slightly different. So I usually went for the elves or the humans, just because it was more relatable to me, so that I could actually push myself into the character a little bit more.
Okay, cool.
So, sorry. Just interesting, the different ways we look at it, right?
Yeah, true. I don't think either way is less valid. I think it's cool hearing about different perspectives and different ways that, this genre of game that I love, different ways that people interact with it and in different ways that they enjoy it.
Yeah, always. It's fascinating to me what draws people in. And this, like you, is my favorite genre of game.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I kind of figured, but I didn't want to put words in your mouth.
Believable yet fantasy world. I think that's perfectly it. For me, my favorite part of the RPG experience is, and I kind of alluded to it, is stepping outside of the normal and doing something fantastical. So I would completely agree with your assessment of that.
Cool. Apart from like the world, then, what are some other aspects of RPGs that help you have a good experience with them?
So, for me, it's got to be the storytelling. One of the best parts about an RPG game is the art can mimic reality really well. So if you're playing a tabletop RPG game, if your game master is weaving this tale, you have to be invested in the story or you don't want to play. And I feel like it's the same way with the video game thing. Like a great, beautiful world with slightly different rules, with a lot of like these amazing abilities that you want to explore, is going to be boring if the story sucks. And so for me, the storytelling is a huge part of the RPG experience, is the narrative of it.
Yeah, that's not on the, not in the notes because I just threw whatever ideas I had really quickly. But I would agree. That's like, in addition to the world, I'd say storytelling is definitely one of the things that sucks me in and helps immerse me in, into the role-playing game experience, I guess.
Yeah. Maybe you should try a JRPG storytelling. I'm telling you.
Maybe. I tried. Is it Final Fantasy 15? That's the big WoW competition.
Oh, 14?
Oh, 14.
Yeah.
So I tried it, and like I had a trial account. No, sorry. The first time I was going to try it, they had disabled new trial accounts, I guess because they had too many players. So I was like, okay, well, that's fine. And then a few months ago, I was going to try it again, and I got my trial account set up with Square Enix. I got everything downloaded, but I just ran into a lot of problems trying to get it to install. I'd finally got it to install, and then it wouldn't run. And like I tried doing some driver things, and after about an hour, I was like, I can't spend an hour of my time just getting the game installed, So yeah, I mean, maybe I'll try it again because it's been about 6 months since the last time I tried it, and maybe whatever technical issues it had will have been fixed. But and I was trying to install it on a Mac, which the way that it runs kind of under like a Wine emulator. So it installs under Mac, but it runs like under the Linux subsystem that's in Mac OS, and that can be buggy sometimes. So, but I mean,
I haven't
it does.
tried it on Mac. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Haven't tried it on Mac, but I assume because Japan is so heavily dominated by Sony and PC Linux builds,
Yeah.
that you might have a hard time finding it on a Mac OS.
Yeah, and I mean, I have a gaming PC right here. I just at the time I was primarily driving my my new MacBook, and on their website it said yes, it's compatible. So I mean, admittedly, some of it was just me being salty. Like, you say it's compatible, and yet it's not. So I'm not going to play your game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll give it another try, see how it goes.
There you go. As far as Final Fantasy series, the MMO, they've had 2 MMOs, are not my favorite. They don't do the series justice. I've got one that makes my top 5 list that we'll talk about later. But if you wanted like an awesome experience, I would go into Final Fantasy VII.
That's the one that people usually recommend when I've talked to them.
Yeah, I feel like that just epitomizes what is Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
So
Cool. It's on the list.
there you go.
So at this point, I think we can just jump into kind of the list of different games and franchises that have helped define the RPG genre, and just kind of, I mean, I don't have any really strong talking points. We can talk about like likes and dislikes, and we can talk about plot lines. We can talk about game mechanics, kind of whatever we want.
I say we just go through down the list and we talk about likes, dislikes, and all that. I don't think we need to really have a real guided conversation on it.
Cool.
So,
Well, then with that, I have video backgrounds. So if you're watching the live stream, you get to see them.
I want to watch.
If you're listening to the podcast, maybe you should check out the live stream. Not going to say it's always going to have, fancy stuff, but I did have a little bit of time this afternoon, so.
There you go. I had all the time in the world, but I spent it napping.
Yeah, well, that's important for you right now, sir, so.
I don't know which is worse, the jet lag or the COVID, in all honesty.
It's probably a combination. But I do not envy you. Yeah. So just in case I'm not sure if anybody is watching, it says we have a couple of viewers, but it could just be the restream thing. If you're watching, what you're seeing right now is World of Warcraft. You're seeing me back when I was playing a Demonology Warlock. This would have been in the Legion pre-patch, because what you're seeing is my guild doing a raid of the opposing faction leaders. There was an achievement called For the Horde, and you have to go and kill all of the leaders of the opposing faction, which is the Alliance. And the way that I know that it's the Legion pre-patch is because currently on the screen we are fighting King Anduin Rin. And some of the people in the raid had been trying to avoid spoilers, and then they joined the raid and saw this, and they were kind of upset because that was a major spoiler to learn that Varian had died. Or no, so yeah, okay. That was at the beginning of Legion that he died, right?
Yeah, it was during the
It's like the opening
launch
cinematic.
Yeah.
That's right. Okay.
So
Gotta make sure I've got my details right so I don't get angry tweets, but
all right, so Warcraft. Likes, dislikes, feelings about it. I'll go first.
okay. Oh wait, hold on. I have a thing for this. Ready?
I apologize for everybody that's been listening to us with headphones. Warcraft. So this game, I have a love-hate relationship with. I love where it was. I love some of the strengths. Community-focused, goals. We've talked about it a lot in the show in the past. The fantasy world is great. The story, the writing's great. The animations for a system that's... How old is it now? 15 years?
2004. So what is that?
18? 16? 18?
Something like that, yeah.
18 years. So a system that's 18 years old, still, it's still beautiful. A lot of people rip on it because they don't like the cartoony atmosphere and all of that stuff. But I love the artwork. I love the story. I love the way the systems all work together. I really like the direction that it was going. My dislike for it has almost everything to do with the studio itself right now. I feel like they're catering a little bit too much to like the puzzle gamers and the play a bit here and there. The story has kind of fallen off, in my opinion, and then they've done a bunch of ability tweaks to bring it back down to a manageable level, which I agree it needed to happen. But they've basically turned my old main class into an almost unplayable shadow of what it used to be. And so I had a hard time playing it, and I finally quit my WoW addiction, mostly because the game was no longer fun for me. But I do think that they do a great job with mechanics, community organization, and storytelling. And as I've said before, storytelling is a huge part of what draws me in. So studio issues have kind of ruined it, but otherwise it's still a great game.
Yeah, agreed. I'm just, fair warning, I'm probably going to be a little bit biased. This is honestly probably my favorite video game of all time. I have played since it was released. I think there was a period of about 6 months that I didn't play. I actually canceled my subscription. It was like yeah, there was like divorce and other messy things involved. It was a bad time. But other than that, this has been a really big part of my life. And I still have friends that I talk to every day that I've met playing this game. My wife and I still play well, she still plays occasionally. I probably play 3 or 4 times a week. And like you said, the storytelling, there's honestly a lot in the game. They may not have a lot of like the decision driven storylines, fancy cinematics, voice acting. But if you pause and like read all of the quests and you go through and you pay attention to little details, there's so many storylines and so many things are so intricate, and you can just become so immersed in this world. Each playable race has unique storylines that you can go through and experience. Each faction has unique experiences. And for a long time, I played both sides, both factions, so that I could get both sides of the story. And I forgot what else I was going to say, but there's in fact, there's an achievement in the game called the Lore Master, which is not super common. It involves you having to go through, and you don't have to complete every quest because there's tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of quests, but you do have to complete all of the main storyline quests. And I have the Lore Master achievement on my main character because it's been so much fun, like going through, replaying on different alts, getting all the different, like I said, the different perspectives. And for someone who's extremely introverted, like I am, it seems strange that my favorite game would be one that's so socially driven, but I don't know, maybe it's because I find it easier to socialize as a fictional character. And that's also probably partly why I enjoy playing on role-playing realms. WoW is divided into different types of servers. And there's a type of server called a role-playing server, which is exclusively for players that are interested in interacting as their character. So when you're speaking to other characters out in the world, the expectation is that you interact, you act, you speak as your character would. And that's how I prefer to play. It's not how I always did. When I started playing, I just played on the servers my friends were on. But it's been a lot of fun. I've put a lot of time into it. And I don't really know what else to say. It's just, I really love the sense of community, like you said. I like the storyline, the gameplay. It's had its ups and downs. They tend to try and rebalance things and update classes every time there's a major patch that comes out. Sometimes it helps things, sometimes it hurts things. I do have multiple characters of different classes that I play. For a while I had 3 or 4 that I rated with, like pretty high up in the rankings. And so I'm pretty comfortable with different classes. And so if they, like this last patch, they kind of messed up my preferred class. So I just swapped to a different one have been playing that. But I think it also helps keep the game feeling fresh. It keeps it not feeling quite so stale to have those rebalancing and updates. And then just the other thing, I've really been having a lot of fun getting back into World of Warcraft Classic. A few years ago, they decided they were going to re-release, back starting with the initial vanilla World of Warcraft and then go through and re-release each of the major expansions. And it's been fun to go back and play through that because I was there for it the first time, and so now I get to go and experience it with some of my friends and my guild mates who maybe are newer and didn't get to experience it the first time around. And they are currently getting ready to release Wrath of the Lich King Classic. I don't remember the exact date. I want to say it's in September. And that was one of my favorite times. So really looking forward to being able to play through that again.
Nice.
I'll stop there.
Yeah, no, that really was a lot of information. I do want to I do want to mirror before I quit playing this game. I definitely had a lot more fun on the roleplay servers, like yourself. I started out in a player versus player server, and then I went into a player versus environment server, so more of your dungeons and raiding type of thing. Because that's where you were at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I was part of a very active player versus player guild, and then just life got in the way, and guild leadership and internal politics kind of ruined it, and they switched factions to get rid of the people that they deemed unworthy to. So basically, the poor players that couldn't pay for multiple subscriptions to Shadowbox and do all the stuff that is technically against terms of service. And it just kind of turned into a bad situation. So I ended up joining you on the player versus environment, and then role playing was a lot of fun just because you got to put yourself in the role of your character, which in an MMO you're not really you can't really dictate how the story goes because it's got to be the same for everybody. And so the role playing kind of gave me that RPG experience a little bit more, just because it gave us a chance to interact with others as our character would, where we didn't really have a say in how the story would play out because there isn't defining choices in this game. So I think that's cool.
Yeah. I'm not going to follow up anything you said because I could talk about WoW for days.
No, I'm realizing that Diablo, same company, comes from Blizzard, Activision Blizzard. This one I have a special spot in my heart. Diablo 2 came out while I was in university, and it's probably one of the first games that I played over a high-speed internet connection with other people on my dorm floor, being able to kind of play and explore Diablo 2 that way. So some of the things that I like about it, I love the instant gratification. I like that it's a top-down game. I don't know if you've got video of it. I'm not on the stream.
I do, yeah. I just switched it. The footage I have is of Diablo 3, but it's pretty similar.
Yeah, the Diablo thing. So it's a top-down action RPG, dungeon crawler. So pluses, instant gratification. You kill something, loot drops, you pick it up. Loot's better, you put it on. Deconstruct the other stuff, keep moving forward. You definitely feel more powerful as you gain loot and gain more. The loot drives the experience, the leveling experience, more than the levels do. And when I say loot, I mean the items that drop off of bad guys, in case you're unfamiliar with that terminology. I like this one. The classes are very simple. There's infinite possibilities, but really the game developers realize that there is going to be a meta style of gameplay, and they kind of cater to it, creating loot drops that will enhance the meta a little bit more. So you feel powerful, you gain power, replayability, that type of thing. As far as the bad goes, um, I think it's almost too fast. The story lacks in places, and sometimes the ability it turns into just a hack and slash, more of an action game than an RPG game, especially later on once you become almost all powerful. So
Yeah, agreed. I really like the way that the Diablo team has set up the seasonal play, at least in Diablo 3. It really lends itself to that replayability that you were talking about, where you start over with a new, fresh character. You start over without all of your, super overpowered Paragon abilities, they're called. And in a way, you're kind of doing the same thing you've always done, but you can get different rewards and try out different classes. And it's definitely... So I didn't really play Diablo 2 much, but I have played Diablo 3 quite a bit. And Diablo 3 definitely throws a lot of loot at you. You kill somebody and gold and armor and gems literally like rain from the sky. But that makes it fun. They could maybe tone that down a little bit. I think they're going to in Diablo 4. But and my wife has actually gotten really into Diablo Immortal, which I know gets a lot of criticism for its microtransactions, which it should. They're ridiculous. She's just doing the free-to-play. She likes it mostly because she can jump in on her phone, play for 5 minutes, and jump out. That really caters to her preferred play style. And, excuse me, I think it will be interesting to see where things go from there. I heard somewhere that Diablo Immortal is pulling in like $20 million a day. So
Jeez.
it's pretty crazy. At best, I guess that's helping fund some of these other projects, hopefully. But at the same time, I hope that they don't do this with all of their games. So I don't know. We'll see. It's definitely fun. And I like that it's available on consoles, because that enables me to play with friends that maybe are not big computer gamers. I have lots of friends that they have an Xbox, and so we'll play on Xbox.
Fair.
So, anything else about Diablo?
No, I think we're good.
Okay. Next on the list, you're going to have to drive most of this discussion, because I have played this game for all of about 10 minutes. Well, at least the online one. I've played Oblivion and Skyrim a lot, but Elder Scrolls Online, which is what our video footage is from, I've not played very much at all.
Elder Scrolls Online is a beautiful disaster. I've noticed something as we have kind of gone through these, the solo play version of the games. We talked about 2 MMO only type of games. So now that we're getting into these series that have an online versus a solo play, the solo play always trumps, in my opinion, the multiplayer online type of game. So when it comes to Elder Scrolls Online, the storytelling is great. It plays like a single player game. And I think that is where they failed, is they tried to stay true to the Elder Scrolls storytelling and create a massive multiplayer environment, and it just fell very hard. It had probably one of the worst starts outside of the Final Fantasy Online game in MMO history. I got in on the early beta, played through it, and I was one of the people that played the beta and went, "Yeah, I'm not subscribing to this. This is the way the game plays. This is not worth subscribing to." Um, I think they've gotten a little bit better. I'm actually in the background. I'm reinstalling it right now just so I can go play it. Now that they have a buy it once, play it forever thing, it feels like they've gotten a little bit better. Storytelling is storytelling. So, talking about the MMO, voice acted, storytelling is great, environment is very immersive. They fell very short on the social aspects. As far as the single player games, by far my all time favorite series of games. I'm very excited for Elder Scrolls 6 that Bethesda announced not too long ago. So I'm excited for that one. But the strengths of the single player game, the explorable environment, the open world, you can do whatever you want. You can follow the main story if you want. You can do the side quests if you want. You can go buy a plot of land and be a farmer and live out your fantasy life of growing crops and selling them in town every now and again if you want. It is probably one of the most character customizable games that I've ever played. I really like the leveling system that they do where you gain levels through doing activities. So if you're fighting with a sword and shield, as you get better at that, your character progresses in level, and then you use that to level up with caps. So you can't just go become an all-powerful mage if you've only hack and slash the entire time, because your ability to cast spells is not going to be a high enough ability compared to your striking and blocking. And I really like how they do that. So it caters to your leveling experience, caters to how you play the game, and I think that is brilliant, really well done. They have a unionized voice acting group, so it's almost like coming home when you go from Elder Scrolls Oblivion into Elder Scrolls Skyrim, and you've got the same voice actors union doing the same voices for the different races, and so you feel a continuation no matter where you are. As far as what it does bad, they are often too focused on the world building, too focused on the story, too focused on the beauty of the game, that the programmers can leave a lot of bugs in there. There's a lot of times in Elder Scrolls Oblivion where I just fell through the floor and did the infinite fall through the world that they developed because there was a bug in the floor. Little game-breaking things like that. Kind of funny, create great vines or TikToks or like YouTube shorts, but it does break immersion, which when you're in an RPG, you're hoping for that immersion. So, but as far as game studios, Bethesda with their Elder Scrolls franchise is probably the epitome of how to do an RPG game, in my opinion. Sorry, I feel like I just World of Warcrafted the Elder Scrolls
You're
series.
good. Not a problem. Yeah, I don't remember where I heard it, but I heard somewhere once that the Elder Scrolls games are famous for two things. One is super immersive, open world. The other is lots of bugs. And the bugs, most of the bad ones get patched out. I was playing Skyrim. I don't remember what platform it was on. It might have been on Xbox. And I remember that there were bugs during the opening sequences that I experienced in the first go around, first several go rounds that weren't there anymore. But then the other side of that is there's so many of them that, and with an open world game, like there's no possible way that the QA team can test every condition. So it's kind of a catch-22. But so Skyrim is the Elder Scrolls game that I have the most experience with. And I remember, so I had played Oblivion a little bit, not much. I had a friend that had it, and so when I would go over, I would play on his Xbox. I didn't have one when I was at that time. So Skyrim was kind of my first foray into the Elder Scrolls franchise, as far as like being able to sit down and like get into the nitty gritty by myself. And I remember my first playthrough, I went and completed the main storyline in like 3 hours. It was kind of like, okay, well now what? And that's when I learned, like you said, it's very open-ended. You can go do the main storyline right at the beginning. You can do side quests and never finish the main storyline. You can, do some quests and then go and marry a werewolf and live happily ever after. So that's one of the things I love about them is you do whatever you want. If you're riding your horse and you see a cool mountain, you're like, oh, I'm going to go climb that mountain, and you can go climb the mountain. So it was one of my early experiences with a true open world game, and I kind of fell in love with that aspect of it.
Sorry, I had myself muted.
Stop talking at a bad moment.
As I coughed my lung out, I had myself muted. In the interest of moving this along, I don't want to go too far into the other Bethesda IP, but I do feel like we do need to mention Fallout, which is an RPG in a futuristic setting. Basically, everything that's great about the Elder Scrolls they do in this, it's not my favorite because I'm not a big fan of guns, weapon play, first-person shooters. But I do have to mention that the Fallout series, at least from Fallout 3 onward, are amazing RPG experiences as well.
Yeah, definitely. Very popular.
Next on the list is Star Wars, the Old Republic, or the Old Republic games.
Okay. So I have played this was it a couple of years ago. You were pretty heavily into playing this one, and you convinced me to pick it up. We actually played together for a while. This one was a lot of fun. It's very heavy on the, I always refer to it as like the Mass Effect style storytelling. Every time you talk to somebody, there's a series of decisions you can make, and you've got different responses, and those responses can, in this case, help drive you towards like the light side or the dark side and different things like that. It's an MMO, so lots of other players online in the world. You're interacting with them, you're doing quests. To me, it's kind of like World of Warcraft in space. The thing that I really liked about it was the community. Everybody that I interacted with seemed to be kind of how old school WoW players were. Very like helpful, very welcoming, at least for the most part. I mean, you've always got griefers, but and so I really liked that about it. Some of the things I didn't like, again, bugs. For some reason, there was this weird issue, and I remember looking it up on Reddit and on the forums where the specific mouse that I had for whatever reason, there was a bug with the game where every so often it would just like randomly throw the camera straight up above your head, and you had to alt tab, so minimize the game, unplug the mouse, plug it back in, alt tab back into the game, and then it would be fixed. And it did it once when I was like in I'm going to say raid because I don't remember what you call them there.
Operation.
Yeah, and I was tanking, and it threw the camera up, and I was like, oh, fuck. And so I alt tap the game. I'm like trying to unplug my mouse, plug it back in as fast as I possibly can, get back into the game, and somehow, like, I don't know, by some miracle, I didn't die. I didn't like stand in something I wasn't supposed to, and I was able to finish tanking the thing. But yeah, it was stressful, but
I believe it. Wow.
it was a lot of fun. I actually still have this one installed. I just haven't loaded up for a long time. But yeah, definitely really liked the storytelling in this. The player housing was fun. That's something that WoW doesn't have, even though people have been asking for it for forever. And it was fun to be able to do that, and I can see why people want it added to other games, because it's really cool to have your own little space to customize and make it your own. So, and what's her name? The companion, Vale? Is it Vale? Vet? Yeah, is one of the best characters ever. Very well written, very well voice acted. Love the little sarcastic quips and stuff.
Yeah, she's great. I'll add my 2 cents because I play this one and I still play it. I got together with some friends and we're doing a full playthrough on Twitch, where we all started same class, same planet, and we're working through and we're doing all of the dungeons, all of the quest lines on every single planet on the Sith side. So it's still something that I play quite often. There's a reason why it's like Mass Effect. It's because it's developed by BioWare, a wing from the EA company that did Mass Effect. So that's where the story, the conversation arcs come from. As far as the strengths of SWTOR, in my opinion, the cutscenes are its strengths. The storytelling is its strength. So you've got the dialect choices, the options on how your character progresses through speaking to the characters. Everything's voice acted, at least through base game. They launched an expansion during the Voice Actors Guild strike, which has a little bit of written dialogue now, because the voice actors were not allowed to work during that time. So in one of the later expansions, there is some written dialogue with very basic answers from non-union members that did the voice acting during that time. Anyway, enough about the politics of the Voice Actors Guild. Cutscenes, voice acting is great. My biggest issue is the technology is a little bit younger than World of Warcraft, but still old, and they're basically using an engine that should be obsolete at this point. They need to wrap this one up and create a new MMO, or do a complete overhaul and rebuild the engine and have everybody install new, in my opinion, because it is clunky on new machines. I've got a gaming PC that can run it theoretically in Ultra, but it comes out super laggy and super broken. So, yeah. I guess if that's the only thing that's wrong with the game is slight bugs and optical issues on an old system, then they're still doing pretty good.
Yeah, it's not too bad. It does. So I don't know that we've mentioned this for the other ones, and maybe they exist in the other games too, and I just haven't noticed it. But it seemed a little heavy on microtransactions, and like loot box type stuff, at least for the time, because this one's been around for a while. So they kind of seemed to jump on that bandwagon pretty early, just in my opinion.
What I like about the microtransactions in this game is it's all cosmetic. There's no
Right?
pay to
Yeah.
win.
Yeah.
And so you're not forced to buy the microtransactions.
Yeah, and it doesn't really give you an advantage even if you do.
Yeah.
So, but if you're prone to like a gambling addiction or stuff like that, or if you're one of the people that has FOMO about like collectibles and stuff, it could be a slippery slope.
Yeah. The good thing is, as somebody that kind of plays around with the cartel market,
You
in
can
order
make
to
money.
access the later expansions, you have to be subscribed to the game. And
Mhm.
with your subscription, you get a certain amount of coins every month that it renews that your subscription's active. And so you're not, at least I'm not buying extra coins to buy the stuff. I'm just stockpiling subscription rewards.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, if you are prone to gambling addictions or playing the galactic market and trying to get that rare drop that you can sell to other players for a huge amount of credits, it can be a slippery slope. But by the same token, I feel like World of Warcraft can also kind of go down that way with the auction house at that game as well.
Yeah, they've got the WoW token that you can buy with real money now, so
Yeah.
it can be a little pay to win to a point.
To an extent, yeah.
The best gear is not going to be available that way, but yeah. Let's see. Next, I think we Go ahead.
We accidentally skipped over Final Fantasy, so I think we need to do a quick talk, even though we kind of discussed that earlier
No, fair enough.
during the JRPGs.
Let's do it.
So super fast. I know we're getting kind of long in the episode, and we haven't even done our top 5 list yet. Final Fantasy Online, the worst launch that has ever happened. So bad, in fact, that Square Enix took down the servers 1 year after the launch, completely remade the game, and then relaunched it as a whole new game because subscribers were that ticked off about it. If that doesn't tell you what is wrong with this world, I don't know what will. They've done a good job of getting it back. Super grindy, Eastern RPG. It did not do well in the Western market just because of how long it took to level up, and I feel like they balanced it out now. Storytelling is great. Biggest problem: too many stories and not enough drive. Very confusing for a new player. First 20 levels or so, you're still sitting there going, what in the world am I doing? By the time you finally figure out what you're doing, you've kind of moved into the main story, but it takes a long time to get to the main story as you're learning all the mechanics. Into the single player games, what I like about them is the gaming world is story driven. It's a mix of high fantasy with technology, so you can have gun wielding knights with like knives attached to them. It takes it kind of blends genres really well into a cyberpunk, a steampunk kind of world for most of these games, and it's just it's a unique environment. Protagonists are always in the single player. The protagonists are always kind of a weak, undermined, and the antagonists are usually something strong and very imposing, world changing. And so you feel like you're fighting for the good of mankind in almost every single game, which is kind of fun. Biggest issue, every single game starts the same. It's always it's your classic role-playing genre of somebody without parents who's thrust into greatness due to some spiritual being or some godlike thing. And so the storylines get kind of old, considering it's the same one rehashed, at least for the first little bit of every single game. I think that's all I have on the good and the bad on this one.
One thing that I was going to ask, can you talk a little bit about the class system in the MMO version? Because I know that's different than like WoW, for example, right? Because in Final Fantasy, can't you like respec into different classes?
That is one of the pluses of the MMO, Final Fantasy Online, is you can play however you want to play. You can respec at any time, and every single time you take on a new class, you don't forget the old class. And so you could max level like a monk and then go, oh, I kind of want to try healing, and go down to the Healers Guild, White Mage Guild, and you can start afresh, and you have different stories for the classes that you choose, so that you will level them up without running out of things to level up. And so theoretically, you could have a single playable character who is max level of every single job or class in the entire game.
Okay.
And I think that's really cool. Just you don't have to roll a new character to try a new class. You can just try a new class.
Yeah, that would be nice. So can you, like in Dungeons and Dragons, can you like multi-class, or do you have to pick one or the other?
It's not. You can't multi-class like in a tabletop RPG. So it is a one or the other.
Okay.
Except for one, they have something called a blue mage, which is half healer, half damage dealer.
Okay.
That you can do, but the benefits fall off kind of like a tabletop RPG. The benefits of multi-classing kind of fall off at the higher levels.
Sure, yeah.
Because you're not getting your super powerful spells.
Yeah.
But no, multi-classing is not something, but you are able to switch classes in safe zones. So if you're part of a raid group and you normally are a healer, you can reclass into a melee damage dealer, a ranged damage dealer, or a tank, depending on your group's needs, as long as you're not in combat. So it's really cool to be able to switch on the fly.
Yeah, that would be cool. Yeah, definitely sounds like a plus.
So,
All right.
There's Final Fantasy.
On to Zelda, the Zelda franchise. This one kind of honestly was my first foray into video games in general. I mean, as long as you don't count like Super Mario Brothers, and played there. I'm trying to remember what the Atari game was that I played. I don't remember. Anyway, it was like a cowboy shooting one, but the first game that I like played in earnest and like tried to progress in was the original Legend of Zelda. This one it's been around for a while, and they've made quite a few, similar to Final Fantasy. Legend of Zelda has not gone down the MMO route yet. I know a lot of people would really love that, myself included. But they have, with the last release, Breath of the Wild, and with the new one that's coming out sometime, if they ever finish it, they have gone into the open world. um, genre. And like, I really love. So, if we're talking about things that I like in the Legend of Zelda games, I'm going to say. So, the ones that I have played the most are original, and then didn't really play many until A Link to the Past. Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, Link to the Past, and then Breath of the Wild. So those are probably the top 5 ones that I've played, and I've honestly really enjoyed all of them. I really love the way that the dungeons work, where it's like you have to solve a puzzle. It's not just going into a dungeon and fighting an enemy. And the latest one, Breath of the Wild, has done a really good job of kind of combining the puzzle aspect along with the boss aspect, where you have these really intricate puzzles that you have to solve in order to be able to fight the boss of the dungeon. And really creative, not just like platformer puzzles like some of the older ones were. So in Breath of the Wild, there's 4 main dungeons, I guess you would call them. You're inside of these like mechanical beasts that are driven by magic, and you're having to use abilities and things that you have picked up. And each one of the beasts kind of follows. It kind of culminates the story of that zone that you're in. And so the puzzles are themed to the storyline and the quests that you've just finished playing. And it's just really cool to have it all kind of tied together. And similar to how we talked about with Skyrim, with Breath of the Wild, there's lots of side quests. There's just the open like exploration aspect. You can go anywhere on the map. You can do anything. You can climb whatever you want. There's also even a limited like crafting aspect, which is new for Zelda games. It's limited to like cooking and consumables, but you can go and farm ingredients for different dishes. You can discover recipes. You can collect like animals and make potions and elixirs and stuff, and it's really in depth. Definitely one of my top ones. Have you played any of the Zelda games? What's your feelings on those?
I played the original one. Played through. We kind of talked about it during our action games. Played through Majora's Mask. I haven't played any of the new ones. For me, this is a series. It's enjoyable when I'm playing, but it's not one that I'm exactly excited for when it comes out. So, you definitely have more information on it than I do. The new one, I did get the Breath of the Wild for the Switch. I did enjoy that one. I enjoyed the puzzle solving, open world. But to me, it's not my ideal RPG. It's more action, adventure oriented. But that's not to say that it's not a great game, and I definitely recommend people who are looking for an action adventure type of game to go out and enjoy it.
Yeah, fair enough.
So our last two, we'll cover Pokemon. This is your classic intro RPG for a generation of gamers. I like this one because it's more about capturing pets and having them fight for you. It's not super violent, but the level up system is a little bit weird having to know everything about all the pets that you have with the Pokedex and all that stuff. So this is another one that I didn't get super into until later. I had Pokemon Red on the original Game Boy, and then I did the Sword and Shield in the Switch, as I was looking for a really good RPG, turn-based RPG
Mm-hmm.
for the Switch. So it's enjoyable, kind of juvenile, not quite your traditional RPG, but still fun.
Yeah, agreed. Fun little game. My experience has mostly been with the kind of the older ones on like the Game Boy Advance. I don't remember which one it was that I played on the DS. One of my siblings was really into the Pokemon games, so I would help him a lot, kind of coach him on different game mechanics and stuff. And then obviously I've played Pokemon Go. That's kind of a different class of game. But yeah, great intro to the whole aspect of like, taking on the persona of a player character and being assigned like tasks from non-player characters. So really good introduction to the genre. But
Right.
the genre has definitely shifted since then.
That's gosh.
So
So the last one on our list of games franchises is Stardew Valley and other indie games. Stardew Valley is probably one of my favorite indie games that I've ever stumbled across. What I love is it's developed by a single person who did all of the art, music, gameplay, style, all of that by himself without a team. Which in a way actually makes it almost flawless because there's not a lot of bugs when you have a bunch of people working on separately and trying to blend them together like you do with Bethesda. Big AAA studios, you get releases that are full of bugs that have to be patched out. This, because it was a passion project by a single entity, didn't have those on release. So what I like about this one, it's not your traditional RPG. It's got RPG elements, but it's very casual with a hardcore gaming type of thing. I don't know exactly how to describe what it is, except it is it's a brilliant blending of a farming simulator, romance simulator, and RPG dungeon crawler all combined into one entity, and it's a lot of fun because it does blend such varying types of gameplay.
yeah, so Stardew Valley, I have purchased this game on 5 different platforms. And I do not regret it one bit. It's also not very expensive. So
Right.
I'm not like made of money, but so yeah, this, like you said, this is created and developed by one guy. He goes by Concerned Ape. I don't remember his real name, but it's just
I can't remember.
incredible to me that one guy did all of this, and it took him like 4 years, I think he said 4 or 5 years. And this was the kind of the pixel art resurgence started before this for sure, but this was kind of the first game that I picked up that I would say is, I don't know, there's probably an actual term for this, but it's like high resolution pixel art. So it's different than just, playing like an old 16-bit game and upscaling it for a big computer screen. It's just a very, very whimsical, very fun, and like bright and cheery, and kind of the storyline of this character that you play, where you are working in, like, the game opens up and you're literally sitting in a cubicle typing on a computer, and you find out that your grandfather has died and he's left you his farm in this town called Stardew Valley. So you go and you take over the farm, and it's like completely overgrown. You have to till the ground, plant crops. You sell those crops for money, use that money to buy more seeds, and just progressively grow your farm. You can buy animals later on. Like you mentioned, there's a whole like relationship aspect. You can give gifts to people, increase your friendship level. You can date and marry and have kids in the game. There's like this whole dungeon crawler system. There's crafting. It's, yeah, I can't say enough positive things about this. I know he was inspired a lot by the Harvest Moon series of games, and he created this to address kind of some of the shortcomings of those games. And really, it started as a project to kind of improve his game design skills. And then he got approached like partway through by this developer that said, "Hey, like, we'll publish this for you so you can spend more time on it." And the other thing that I love about this game is he is continually adding to it. Like, he's slowed down a little bit because he's working on a new game. I forget what it's called. You play a chocolate maker. It's something chocolatier, but for years and years, he was adding additional patches, adding additional content. There's like another little city in the desert now that you can expand into. There's also a tropical island that you can visit and grow all of these new like tropical crops, and you can open up a resort for the townspeople back in Stardew Valley. It's honestly surprisingly detailed and surprisingly deep. So definitely would recommend picking this one up, especially because it's also available on mobile, which I know a lot of people really love their mobile games because they're just so convenient. And this one actually plays really well on a phone. The control scheme is really great. It doesn't do the really annoying like virtual joystick stuff that a lot of mobile games do. Diablo Immortal. It's an actual, like, when he ported it to mobile, it's an actual like kind of point and click touch. Like, you click on the screen and say, "I want to go over here," and you go over there. Or you tap on like the turnip and he goes and like picks the turnip. So definitely a enjoyable experience on a phone and on a touchscreen, just as much as on a console or mouse and keyboard. They all are really well done. So if you're listening, Mr. Concerned Ape, very well done.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we've talked your ears off for quite a while. Let's go into our top fives.
Let's be honest, we always knew that this was going to be a long episode.
Oh, yeah.
When you and I start talking RPGs.
Yeah, both of our favorite genres for sure. So,
Okay.
Number 5 for me is World of Warcraft. As stated above, it has a special place in my heart, but development has fallen off and it is not as enjoyable as it used to be. I do recommend it for anybody that is looking for an MMO introduction to an RPG, because it is very streamlined for the new player.
Okay. So my number 5 is Skyrim. No special reason that it's number 5. I just like the other ones more.
Fair.
No, I part of it honestly is the Skyrim was in that time period where everybody was pushing for the ultra realistic graphics, but the like animations and stuff weren't quite right. So this one kind of lives in that uncanny valley where everything looks really great until you start trying to like run or move, and it just kind of looks weird for me. So if I had to nitpick about something, that would be it.
No, that's a fair talk. Number 4 for me is Stardew Valley. We just talked about that 2 seconds ago. So I love this game because it feels open world. You can work for the giant corporation to ruin the town. You can try to build community in the town. You can decide that you're going to be a fisher. You can be a farmer. You can go be a dungeon explorer. The options are seemingly limitless, and it is incredibly well done for a single developer.
My number 4 is Diablo 3. I'll just say the Diablo franchise, but Diablo 3 is the one that I've played the most. It's a lot of fun. I love that, it's got kind of that online aspect, but also, you can play all by yourself. You can play co-op with like 4 other people or 3 other people. And yeah, it's just really fun dungeon crawler, good storytelling if you take the time to go through and read through it.
Nice. Number 3 is Skyrim on my list. This one, Elder Scrolls Skyrim. Absolutely love the open world, love the exploration, love the storytelling. The story of Skyrim is pretty good with the whole Dragonborn, all of that stuff. But kind of like you mentioned, the bugs are probably the only reason why it's not ranked higher. It is probably one of the buggiest of the Elder Scrolls games. Granted, I haven't played the 10-year anniversary edition. Maybe that one's better, but who knows?
Okay. My number 3 is The Legend of Zelda, specifically Breath of the Wild. This one, I'm noticing that my top 3 games are the more like animated art style, so I don't know if that's part of it. I don't think it is. I think it's just coincidence, but the reason I bring it up is the art style in Breath of the Wild. I really, really was impressed with how they did that. They were developing it for the Switch, but also to run on the Wii U. They were seriously constrained by the hardware, and they found this super creative, beautiful watercolor style artwork that not only let them overcome those hardware restrictions, but also really made this game something special. And the open world aspect in a Zelda game was just so revolutionary to me. And it really, I feel like Zelda games would have always been this way if the technology had existed. Just being able to go anywhere, do anything. Also, they have really tried to keep updating the game. They've added additional DLC, downloadable content, additional like side quest packs. There's all types of like exploration and collecting you can do. I still don't have all 900 Korok seeds. And yeah, I've put a lot of time into this one. It's my number 3.
I like it. Number 2. My number 2 is and this is really hard. It was a toss up between my number 2 and number 1. Is Final Fantasy X.
10. Okay.
I know I recommended earlier Final Fantasy VII, but 10 is probably the Final Fantasy game that speaks the most to me. I bought it. It's the first game I bought after I bought the PlayStation 2 a long time ago, which was the first console that I bought completely on my own. So it was kind of a transition thing. So like it's got a special spot in my heart. As far as some of the reasons why I love this game, as far as it goes, it's one of the few Final Fantasy games that has like a huge cult following. People are very kind of hit or miss on it, on whether they like it or not. I like it because the first one is the last of the turn-based games, and the second one is the first of the live-action combat system that they launched after it. So it's at that pivotal moment between the two different combat styles. Plus, one of my all-time favorite voice actors, Joe DiMaggio, plays two of the characters in it, and it is always enjoyable to listen to his voice, whether he's doing Bender or doing Waka in this game. So, yeah.
That's worth it just for that.
Yes.
So, my number 2, I'm sure everybody can guess because everybody's going to guess my number 1. But my number 2 is Stardew Valley. This, and I know I just gushed about it already, but this little indie game, this labor of love that was made by one guy, just blows me away. And I was looking up some stats on it. Every time it's been re-released on a new platform, it breaks all kinds of records. When it was released on Switch, it was the top downloaded game for like 6 months after it was released. It was also top when it was released on iOS. It's just a great little game. If you look at reviews for it, they're all 9.5, 4.5 stars, 5 stars. It's just so much fun, so peaceful and calming and relaxing. And like I think I've talked on this podcast before, one of my dreams is to move away from the city and just have a little farm somewhere. So
right.
It's, yeah, it almost tied for my first place. So I should tell you how good it is. I mean, you've played it, but
yeah, it made my top 5.
So,
all right, that brings us to our number 1 spot. So my number 1 spot is a game by Bethesda. And as I said earlier when we were talking about the Elder Scrolls kind of IP, Bethesda knows what it's doing when it comes to role-playing games, and this one is Elder Scrolls Oblivion. So this game starts off in an epic fashion with a talking head. And the voice of this talking head is Sir Patrick Stewart,
nice.
who explains the situation of where you are. So you have this classically trained Shakespearean actor who also played like one of the most iconic Star Trek roles ever, introducing the game to you. You get introduced to this character, and then as soon as you exit the tutorial phase, the world is open. This game was a gift from one of our uncles. He gave it to me because I loved watching him play whenever I'd go visit. So he gave me this as a birthday gift, and this is before the time of Steam, so I can't tell you how long realistically it was, but every waking hour I spent playing this game. I played it up one side, down the other, did all of the DLCs, did all of the extra content, did almost every single quest line, I probably put in close to 200, 300 hours on this game alone. And it is still holds up as one of my all-time favorite games ever made by this studio. So, yeah.
Yeah, I wish I had played this one more. Like, I wish I had the opportunity to play it more. Because what I did play on, like at friends' houses, it was just a lot of fun. I didn't get to really experience the progression. I was mostly, playing on a friend's save file.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it was fun. So my number one then, obviously, is World of Warcraft. I know, shocker, right? Everybody's like,
Who would have
so surprised. So in WoW you can run a command to see how long you've played, but it only tells you for that character. And at one point, about 2 years ago, I had gone through and added up all the time, but I can't remember where I put that. So I can't say like what the actual number was, but I can tell you that it was over 1,000. It was well over 1,000. The game, and I'm going to sound like a total nerd, but it was, and not so much the game, more so like the friends and the relationships that I made in the game. They were there for me when like I was at a pretty dark time and in my life, and like I didn't really have a whole lot else that was going for me. I had been going through some things, and while I'm not going to say that it was the game that got me through it, it was the friends and the relationships that I had, and the way that we happened to interact was through the game, because we lived in all different parts of the world. And I think that is a big, like rose tinted glasses for me, I guess. But even that, that being said, putting that aside, it is arguably the most popular MMORPG of all time. And, all of these millions of players play it for a reason. It's a fun game. There's a lot of content in it. There's a lot of different types of content. There's different ways to play it, depending on what you're into. And even me having put thousands of hours into it, I'm nowhere near to doing everything that is possible in that game. I don't know that anybody ever could do everything. And while I will say that escapism can be a unproductive and dangerous coping tool, sometimes it's what you need. And a really immersive RPG with other players that you can talk to and interact with can fill that need at times. So my number one is World of Warcraft.
Perfect. Yeah, I talked about that before. So there's our top fives. Anything you want to add before we tease next week?
I don't think so. I had a quote that I wanted to find. Oh, I'm still playing Stardew on the background. It's all right. I'll switch it. Sorry. Let me see if I can find this. Give me just a minute.
Okay.
If anybody's on the live screen, live stream. I apologize. You get to watch me type on a keyboard for a minute. So you get to play, I don't know, podcast host simulator. Okay, I found it. Let me copy this into the notes. All right. All right. For mindfulness this week, I was trying to find a quote that related to this. So in the research I was reading, kind of on like the history of role-playing and role-playing games. And I found a quote by Gary Gygax, who I'm sure you know who he is, but for our listeners that may not know, was the creator of Dungeons and Dragons. And this quote I thought was pretty fitting, so I'll just read it. It says, "We all, in all cultures and societies, learn behavior from observation, imitation, and encouragement of various kinds. So by this suggestion made, we all pretend most of the time." And it's not like super deep as far as some of the mindfulness stuff we've talked about, but I think that sometimes people that play games, and specifically people that play role-playing games, can get a bad rap. We talked about a little bit near the beginning about how both of us kind of regret when we were younger not exploring those interests a little bit more out of fear of like being made fun of. And I think that Mr. Gygax has a good point here. Like, really, the behavior that we know is stuff that, you know, we observe from others, and really we're all just playing some level of pretend. And it's okay to want to pretend to be in a different world, or pretend to be, you know, in some fantasy land or some fantasy creature. It doesn't make you it doesn't make you less of a person. It doesn't mean that you're like some hopeless nerd. It's normal to want to play games and like read fantasy novels and do all of this kind of stuff. And I'm really glad to see that in the last 10 to 15 years, geek culture has kind of become a lot more mainstream, and it's almost becoming like popular in a way. And I hope that that trend continues. And I hope that if anybody out there is, you know, younger and listening to this, if you've been interested in this kind of thing and you're nervous about how your friends might treat you, don't let that stop you. Like, do the things that you want to do when you want to do them, because at some point you're going to be older and you don't want to look back and regret that you didn't do the things that would make you happy. So That's my 2 cents.
I really like that. Unfortunately, with my COVID brain, it's a lot deeper to go down than we are. But Gygax has always been one of my heroes, just because he did take the ancient art of storytelling and make it applicable in a modern age. So I'm gonna mirror everything that you said, especially since my brain is no longer functioning. So, no, that's a great quote, and I do like the message.
Cool.
Big thank you to everybody who stopped by to catch the stream, everybody who's watching this video on demand, and for everybody that made it through the podcast to this monumental time, almost 2 hours after we started. We do appreciate all your support, and we do look forward to talking to you again next week when we bring to you some tips and hints on how to make this coming school year as successful as possible for either you or your kids, depending on their situation. We'll see you then.
Bye for now. And stopped. And stop stream.